Hello and welcome to another edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. And Bubba, I must say, speaking of emails, I got an email when we were talking about on the big show that we were going to do another, what is it when you install it? It's another installation. Installment. There it is, installment. It's a doggone installment.
Or we could call it part two.
Part two of a series called Letters from the Audience. Now, somebody took issue with that, and they were like, wouldn't it sound better if it was letters from the listeners? And then I said, so I guess the people who watch the show, they're just out?
Well, they listen on TV, too.
Well, yeah, but they're watching, too. I mean, it could be just viewers.
Multiple senses are always involved with the Rick and Bubba show.
Yeah, so I like letters from the audience because that includes anybody, no matter how whether they're seeing or hearing. Because someone who watches it is a viewer,
right?
So letters from the audience. So what this means is people all over the country have sent us emails. And then this is an opportunity for Bubba and I to answer some questions that you may have or have always had. Now, there's some that you may have, if we've already covered it, we're not going to hit that again. We're going to try to do new ones today. So, Bubba, get us started with letter number one.
Well, I hope we don't repeat any, Rick. I tried to take the ones out from last time that I remembered.
We're aging before your very eyes and ears.
Rick, this comes from Cameron Cahill. He says, Dear Rick and Bubba, I'm a big fan when you guys do baby predictions.
Yes.
I love if you guys would give the backstory on how you came up with the type of questions that you ask. Also, can you give us an update on former intern Bruiser?
Okay.
That was a combination there.
That's a two-parter there.
I will tell you in the baby predictions, it was just kind of some things that we began to notice, and I think it was probably back more when we were in the age that we were having kids and friends around us having kids, and we began to notice some trends. And I even had an OBGYN doctor stop me one time in the hall and say, you know, you're onto something with this. And, I'll tell you why. And it was based off the question about the hair on your legs.
Correct.
It's more or less about the same.
Right.
And he said, you know, the placenta is the filter between baby and mother. But said if you're having a baby boy, especially later in the pregnancy, the hormones from the baby boy should be filtered out by the placenta, but it's not always. There is some intermixing of the two systems. And he said many times we see the ladies when they're having a boy, the testosterone will cross over, and they will see more hair growing in strange places. So we were actually on that, and that one has kind of been backed up, at least by the opinion of one doctor.
Yeah, and I had no idea that this edition of Rick and Bubba University would feature Bubba discussing the placenta.
Right.
But
there you go.
That's
the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it. But and I will tell you on the other one, we ask about underwear. That there's really something to that as well, because as we know, the dad dictates. That's why we concentrate on the dad, the gender of the baby and the sex of the baby. And one of the things that is scientific, that if the boys that create boys, they seem to be able to travel further distances than the ones that make girls. And so what happens if you are wearing loose boxers as opposed to tight, you would be sending more people into the game. The tighter ones actually restrict and cause you to send fewer people into the game, making kind of an unfair advantage for the males versus the females. So,
and I think there's probably a temperature thing.
Temperature has to do with that too, absolutely. Yeah. And we're handling this with kid gloves right now, no pun intended.
And also on the cravings.
Yep.
This was not a double-blind study or anything, but it was just through observation.
Right.
And again, it appears that there's some pH balance issues and all that that would dictate males with being more on the sweet side as opposed to the salt side when it comes to cravings.
And we don't know, so that's kind of how there's science behind all this, to answer your question.
And if you get down to the raw numbers of this, you have a 50-50 shot.
Right. This is where we needed Greg on the podcast, because I think Greg has unofficially declared himself someone who documents the life of Bruiser.
Right.
I don't know what's happened to Bruiser. I don't know where he is. I don't have an update on Bruiser.
No, I don't either. I don't either. Maybe somebody can give us an update on Bruiser.
I don't know. So I'm not sure what Bruiser's
we hope he's out there on the highways driving around.
Right, we don't. All right, so Bubba, it's kind of staying with the theme of things about the show. I want to know their backgrounds. Here's another one. Tell us how and who came up with the concept of the golden ticket seats. How did y'all come up with this idea? And I know that it was something that you were pushing. And does this go back to that Chicago studio again?
Yeah, we were on a trip to Chicago many years ago. Hunter had just been born, so it had to be right around 2000 because he was born in 98.
Yep.
And of course, I like going and looking at radio stations.
Yeah.
And that was something I did.
Me too.
From my engineering background.
And plus, I like seeing studios because I was always fascinated with them.
And I was told that in Chicago, I needed to go down and see this radio station on the Miracle Mile because they actually had a window and you could look in. Right. So I went down there and looked at it, and I thought, man, this is the coolest thing ever. You could see in, and they had signs. I think they had a syndicated show on at the exact moment I was there, but they had multiple mics.
Yeah.
And, excuse me. And it was all set up, and then we had looked at some others that had some seats in it. It wasn't a big auditorium or anything, but a lot of radio shows would go out and do a show, where the audience could be there, and we've done those too.
Right.
And so we just thought it would be good to connect, and we love our listeners. Okay, you guys have made this happen.
Right.
So we enjoy getting to meet them, and much like them. Shows that I have listened to and watched. I always like going and trying to get in the audience when it was available. Yeah. Going to see the David Letterman show a couple of times and things. I always thought that was very interesting, and I hope the audience still enjoys that. Look, we got limited space. We could only do 12 for a while. We can only do 8 now. But
yeah.
I hope everybody enjoys that. I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and then the second part is what you were touching on now. Tell us about all the decisions and the adjustments y'all made when you moved to the No Name Studio. Why were those made? Well, one of them is just what you just said, because of room. Yeah. There's not as much room in this studio as far as going in one direction. And the other thing is, the move to just doing it on Fridays. Honestly, when you think about every single day, we're a very small team. And interns, it's getting harder and harder with the intern programs. We'd gone through the pandemic, and we had to deal with that. And really, honestly, even though we love the golden ticket seats, and we do, and it's a great experience, we want it to be kind of a, something people enjoy. And we noticed that there was kind of a law of diminishing return. If you do it every single day, number one, people have a hard time getting here on any day other than Friday.
Right.
So you'd have a lot of people book, and then they wouldn't come because weekdays were tougher. Also, remember, when you come here, you're coming to where we work. And every single day there's a lot of things going on business-wise that we deal with in the breaks and stuff. And we just felt like, number one, there would probably be better participation, and it would be kind of a bigger deal and special to come here on a Friday. And it really also is much easier on our small team to be able to manage, because we also had to take on the fact that people had to be taken care of with a little more one-on-one, like going to the bathroom. We now have to take people all the way to the bathroom. Well, that's fine if it's one day a week, but if you're having to do that every single day while you're trying to do the show with all their other responsibilities and very few interns, if any, this setup just wouldn't work with an everyday, and it wouldn't work with 12 seats. So Fridays and 8 seats adapts better to this new setup.
Yeah, if you track the number of people who have come to watch the show back at the other studio, Fridays were overwhelmingly the largest numbers.
Yeah,
and
it's easier for people.
Because people are usually traveling to go somewhere the weekend, especially if you're out of town. So it really was a quality versus quantity issue, and we can accommodate and give everybody a better experience on Friday than we can every single day.
Yeah, and then we also made it a shorter period of time, because honestly, this is a long show, the weekly show, Monday through Friday, and sometimes people would bring children, and that's a long time for a child to come and sit for 4 hours in a studio and 3 hours. So we cut it to 2, and honestly, I think all the adjustments we've made have been a better experience for the audience. They like being closer, and the staff. I do miss having the big window outside, but that was not an option. We didn't decide to do away with the window. This studio that wasn't possible.
Right.
So and so that had its time, and that was special, and now we got this.
Yeah, I wish we had the big window. I liked it. Now it caused some distractions for us, but but
the good outweighed the bad.
Yeah, it wasn't practical with this setup. So.
Yeah. All right, so what else you got over there?
Kim Hamby writes an email, Rick, and wants to know, I've listened to the show since 2001, and I've heard you guys use the phrase slapped at 5.
Right.
I'd like to know what it means and how it got started. Well, Kim, we have all watched someone on the TV or on news, and they just infuriate you, Rick, to the point you go, what a moron.
Yeah.
And you physically want to slap them.
You do.
And so we thought, wouldn't it be cool if you had a TV show
Yes.
where you brought people on that you wanted to slap, and you brought them on at 5 o'clock, like when the 5 o'clock news would come on, kind of the prime time of the afternoon.
Yes.
And you were allowed to slap somebody on TV at 5 o'clock, and thus the name Slapped at 5.
It really was taking the term bip to a whole nother place.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, not only do you want, is that person a bip, you literally at 5 today on our new show could slap them.
Yep.
And take out all your anger on that person. We'll come back. Letters from you, the audience, will continue on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
All right, we're back. It's letters from the audience, and Bubba, these are real emails that people have sent us, and we're covering things like how the placenta works and slapped at 5. So it's really
We're off to a blazing start.
Bubba, here's one that we have been asked before. We haven't done it on this particular podcast, but it's always an interesting topic. If you and I were not in radio, what else would we like to do? If we could make a living and we could pay our bills and radio was not an option, because this is obviously our first choice or we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Say that wasn't an option. You could make a living doing blank. What would you do?
Now, is this what we would like to do or what we almost did?
Well, really, I know I had a passion to do radio. And I had other passions too.
Right.
But right now, if I was not able to do the job I'm doing, and let me be clear, I love the job I'm doing. I don't desire to have another job.
Right.
But if this job wasn't available, what would be in my 2 slot? That would be hopefully as close to as fulfilling as this job. That I would enjoy it.
I actually applied for a job with Alabama Power as a communications technician.
Right.
My recollection of that was that they did not hire me. Now, the people I applied with have been to the show,
Right.
and sit in the golden ticket seats.
That's
and we
right.
had a discussion about it,
Right.
And they said, "Oh no, we offered you a job, and you turned us down because you were just starting the show with Rick."
Do you remember that? I don't remember that.
Yeah, and so that was when Greg's minions came in
Yeah, I
one
remember
day.
that. Is that true? Do you remember it that way?
I didn't remember it that way.
Yeah.
I would like to think that their way was correct
Okay.
because I was
Feels
very
better.
I was very crushed
Feels
by
better.
the other.
Yeah.
I also I had a group of friends who worked at NASA in Huntsville, and they commuted from where we lived. But it's a pretty good commute every day, about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And there was a job there that I had been encouraged to apply for at one time. I thought about doing that, which I would have loved and enjoyed that too. So.
Yeah.
At one time, I thought I wanted to be a stockbroker. I had a cousin that was in that business, and I enjoyed finance and business and thought I might do that. But, I think this all kind of worked out better when I look at all of those.
Would you ever want to go back to engineering? Or is that what you would have done at the power company?
Yeah, it would have been like that. I don't think I would want to be the on-call guy that had to go work on stuff when lightning hit. If I was designing systems and helping to install them, that's one thing.
Well,
repair is another.
Yeah. For me, when I was growing up, and we've talked about this on the show before, I just wasn't interested in that many things. And radio was my number one. Being the lead singer for a massive rock band was number 2.
Right.
And then number 3 was something involving sports because, I played football. That was really the only 3 things I was really interested in at all. So, but if you look now, and of course I'm not being fair, but since this is a fantasy question, I guess I can make it any way I want it, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So, I would say that I actually would probably enjoy being a stand-up comedian, but I don't want to be the struggling stand-up comedian. I want to be the one that's already gotten big enough that they're playing arenas. Right. Now, I don't know how, but if it's a fantasy job, right, I would like to be a very successful comedian and go out and do concerts and do funny stuff. Probably would love, I don't know that I would truly like to be a football coach because there's so many things that go with that I don't like. I like the actual coaching people up and being there, but I don't think some of the other stuff you have to do and the way people act. I think that would be difficult. And of course, modern day. Probably if I wasn't doing this, and of course if I felt called to it, I'd want to be a preacher.
Yeah,
I'd probably rather be right now a pastor of a church. But then I was told by some people that were talking to me about that one time. They said, being around you more, and I think they were right. You're a preacher. You're not a pastor. There's so many things.
Evangelist.
There's so many things that pastors have to do that would drive you up the wall.
Yeah.
You just like teaching the Bible, but you're forgetting that if you're a pastor of a church, that's
you're
not
a shepherd.
Yeah, that's not all you have to do, and that part would probably be a little tougher. But
and that's a calling. I really think it has to choose you.
Yeah.
That's
so,
for sure. But coaching, I didn't put coaching in there.
I wonder why you didn't say coaching.
Well, I didn't think of it really.
Because you were a very successful tennis coach.
Well, I've enjoyed doing that.
Right. Yeah.
And I enjoy working with folks and seeing them improve. That always gave me a lot of joy to see them get move their way up.
Yeah.
And hopefully we were able to aid in that somewhat.
No, you did a great job. The reason why I don't see, I think that when I say that I can coach, I'm really not a good coach. You were a good coach.
No, you are too. I've seen.
I'm
you
a good motivator. But I don't know if I'm a real good put the time in.
I've seen you call plays.
Oh,
you knew when to drop the pass over the line. You could tell the lull was there. They were getting lazy.
You still remember my double pass, don't
I
you?
do.
But anyway,
and it was I go, he ought to call a double pass.
Right, and we did. Here's the good news. This is what I love about the job.
I would like to have been an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? I didn't think I'd like that side of the ball, but I did it one time and really enjoyed it. But here's the thing that's beautiful about our job. The way it works, we're able to dabble in these other things. Like you've been able to coach. Right. I still get to preach. So the good news is we kind of get to do a little bit of the other one,
right?
But still kind of have this as a foundation that keeps us paying bills and feeding people.
Yes, and that's important.
Yeah. So those are all things that we talked about. What you got over there, Bub?
Rick, a letter from Dana Stevens, and she says, I've been listening to the show for quite a while, watching for several years. The phrase "cram it clown" has been thrown around, and I am unfamiliar with where this came from and the story behind it. Please tell me more. Well, this actually came from a story from a friend of mine.
Yes, it did.
And he was talking about a friend of his when he was a little kid.
Right.
And some of you may not be old enough to remember the Bozo show.
Oh, it was incredible.
And this was a clown, and they had a national show. And I think there was several spin-offs of it in other towns and whatever. And I think this one actually happened in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And this little guy...
It was like a franchise.
Yeah.
Like you could be Bozo.
Yeah. And they did TV shows, and they had little kids come in, and they'd show cartoons.
We had a Bozo show out of Birmingham, didn't we?
Yeah, I believe we
did.
We did. Yeah. We did. And he was there, and he was a little mischievous, to say the least. And he was cutting up and pulling somebody's hair or doing something he didn't need to be doing, maybe making motions to the camera. And Bozo came over and told him, he said, we need you to stop that, little Jimmy, because you're doing a Bobo no-no.
Right, yeah.
And this little kid, 10 years old on live TV, looked up right at Bozo and said, "Cram it, clown." So that story kind of got it started living its own life.
Yes, it has. Yes,
and the joke of "Cram it, clown" kept moving forward. And today it even has more legs than ever.
Well, it is in our marriage. Sherry and I, it has found its way there. And how about this? It has solidified itself.
Might want to clarify that.
Yeah, well, what we do is now if Sherry gets upset with me or I get upset with her, I'll say, I'll tell you one thing, somebody's about to get a cram it clown. And then she will go, no, you cram it clown. And so if we're upset with each other, it's kind of diffused because then we get to laughing.
Right.
If we get kind of frustrated with each other, we'll say, well, I'll tell you one thing, you can cram it clown. And then the warning. I got to tell you what somebody's about to get.
Yeah. Hey, and you better watch out.
So anyways,
you know what's coming your way.
Yeah. So that's good. Bubba, here's along these same lines. We get all these different questions. So this one is a longtime listener, and he said, I used to listen through static when you guys were on Q104. First time I saw and met you guys was September of 1995. We were doing a remote by the fountain on South Side in a car.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? That's what we called that artist. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that call pretty well.
I was shocked to actually see what y'all look like. I bet you were. My questions would be this. The person that would do the old characters and bits on the show, whatever happened to the reporter?
Roger Lewis.
Roger Lewis. Yeah. We can. So let's update that first.
Roger was a friend of ours that did that character, and due to he lived in New York at the time, and he had gone on to do some marketing jobs. It really didn't fit into his job anymore. He was out of radio, so it became more and more difficult to get him to do those on short notice. Would love to have him back on if he ever had time.
Whatever happened to Rocky Tracy? He's running a list here.
That's a good question.
If I recall, unfortunately, and it was incorrect, someone kind of told Rocky that him being our reporter, and he was doing Olympics, right?
Yes, Olympic updates.
That that we were making light of him. I thought that he knew that and was in on the joke. And apparently he got upset and didn't want to do it anymore. Now, what happened after that, I don't know what happened.
Don't know. If anybody knows, let us know.
What happened to the guy that sounded like Gilbert Gottfried that did Throw the Goat? That's Andy Spinozzi. Wasn't that good? He did kind of sound like him, didn't he?
He did. Andy was a very
brilliant
creative,
comedic mind.
Yeah, he was on another morning show here in town, and we used to be in the same building on the same floor, and he would run by our studio and do a bit every now and then. He has since passed away, sadly.
Yeah. He got cancer, didn't he?
Yeah, very, very funny guy.
Yeah, but he was funny.
He always, and to give you a visual, to me, he always looked like Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
I thought they resembled each other a lot.
What's your favorite Speedy adventure? Mine is Vicky Quest, the writer says, and that's from Anita. Vicky Quest is a dandy, and she says, I hate that could never be on the best of because of how long it was. But, I talked to a guy last night when we were recording this. It was actually last night, and he was talking about the Russian jet, and that, to me, is probably my favorite.
That is one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
I will say with Speedy, and I think it is with any of us here, because there's certain words you don't want to say on the air. And anytime anybody has a misspeak, and when you have spoken as many words as we have over 30 years, you're going to misspeak some things and say some things that you might not even use in your normal conversation, but it's just going to come out.
Absolutely.
When anybody misspeaks here, to me, it's the funniest because it's hard for you to get out of it. And I've had a lot of them. If you are going to invite people to a pita shop,
here we go.
Just be careful how you tell them you have a special and invite them to come on in for pitas.
Yeah.
Speedy had he's had several.
Are you going to talk about this?
Well, he's had several. I've had.
You're not going to talk about the jewelry store.
Well,
you can't.
I think that was his worst
but
one.
You can't.
I can't go into.
You can't.
But I think that was his worst one he had.
Yeah. Diamonds do have various cuts.
Yes, they do.
Right.
Yes, they do. You got to be careful.
You got to be careful with that.
We've had several. I tried to say deer holla one time. Hollow. Deer hollow, and I did not say deer. Speedy has also had problems saying the word tick before.
You sure did.
You've had a couple.
I have.
Greg has had a couple.
Yeah.
Some of Greg's I think he just wanted to say.
He did. It's hard to tell whether
Greg
was misspeaking or not.
But I think the bloopers are probably the funniest things. Because you're not
just go south,
you're just not supposed to do it. You don't want to do it, but it happens.
And so the last one is: did you guys really go and eat Thanksgiving dinner with Courtney Cox and Bubba were Jovan Musk?
That entire episode, I've been asked not to talk about anymore.
Yeah, that's over there with the Gunnersville Treaty. I'm sorry. But thank you for bringing that up.
I
laughed real hard when I read that.
I can answer part of that question by saying yes.
We'll be back when Rick and Bubba University continues letters from the audience.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
We're back on Rick and Bubba University, letters from the audience, and boy, has it spawned some conversation. Bubba, it's your turn to come off your stack over there.
Rick and Bubba, this comes from Victoria Wilkes. Rick and Bubba call Birmingham the home of 1,000 lunches. My family recently moved to the area and would love to know the best places to eat in the Birmingham area.
Ooh.
Victoria, that list,
It's a place of it's a city of 1,000 lunches.
we don't have enough time to go through all this, but I will tell you how that came about.
Yeah.
When I first entered the job market, and Rick too, we were in fairly small towns, and there was a lot of places to eat. I went back and actually worked in my hometown of Jacksonville for a while, and there was a handful of places to eat. I mean, there wasn't like 20, you know. I mean, there was just a handful, and you had to, make the rotation and all that. So when we moved to Birmingham, I could not believe the number of places there were to eat. I told Rick, I said, I think I could eat at a different place every day of the year for 3 years and never eat at the same place twice, which would add up to about 1,000 places.
It's just a city of 1,000 lunches.
And I mean, there's just all kind of, and they're all good. That's what's bad.
It's hard to mess it up. I mean, it's almost like the time that Sherry and I, if you want to get the bell ready, went to Rome, Italy. And a friend of mine who is Italian, he said, it doesn't matter where you eat. Everywhere you go will be good. And he was right. Birmingham is almost like that. And even on this email at Victoria, you'd have to get really specific. Like, do you mean eat lunch? Do you mean eat dinner? Because, I'd probably give you different answers on that. But you're always, feel free to email us and be specific. But we can give you the ones that, we hit pretty hard.
You hear some of them advertise on the show?
Yeah, a lot of them advertise on the show, like Nikki's West. If you want to just go get good old, hey, I like Southern food. That's a great one.
Cafeteria style.
Yeah, if you want to get a little fancy and have some, Birmingham has chefs that have world-renowned chefs. Yep. So on some of those, I would suggest Hot and Hot Fish Club, very, very good. Automatic Oyster and Seafood Bar, very good. Bottegas, very good. Bellini's, very good.
Oak House,
very good. Mm-hmm. So all those are good.
And there's a barbecue place on every corner, and they're all good.
Yeah, every barbecue place you go to, you cannot miss. All right, the next letter. Can you guys go into detail on why you quit doing the 13 Days of Horror? I understand that there were some spiritual conflicts, but I wanted to know, was there anything specific that happened that made you guys not want to do it anymore? So you got the part. Some of that it started out.
It was just fun.
It's back
campfire stories.
It's back to that pendulum again.
Yep.
We can't quite seem to get the right balance. And I think some of it was, when you started out, you had all these kind of childhood type ghost stories that were supposed to be fun. But then you realize there's another year and another year and another year and another year, and you got to find 13 days every year. So then you start pressing a little bit. You start thinking, well, look, we got to have people. And then people start telling you to go to things. And one of the things, there's been times in my life throughout my sanctification where I was kind of like, I don't really know. I'm not really clear. I need to really look at it. And then there's times where I just sense the Holy Spirit saying, do not do that. That's the end of that, or you need to do this. It could be do it or don't do it. And in that particular case, the supernatural world is real. There are demons, and then you look at things in Scripture. Some of the stuff, just like everything else in our world right now, the Halloween that we knew as little boys. Yeah. I mean, people have just taken it to places that are just, it's evil, it's dark, it's twisted. And some things started happening to the team that a strong indication it was not just stuff going bump in the night. It was, should I take you back to the phones ringing at the mental health hospital? And so...
And I think some of the audience people started, the listeners started
doing their own thing.
Getting into it a little too much, and it moved from that fun campfire thing to in areas we didn't want to go to.
Yeah, and so we just felt like that we didn't want to be responsible for, number one, people going out and trying to take on this kind of stuff, and we have no idea what their spiritual maturity is. I mean, they could be putting themselves in danger. And even people that were on the team at the time that were going out, all of those were at different places on their spiritual growth, if they were justified at all at the time. So I just started feeling a real responsibility to promoting and sending people into that spiritual realm that, frankly, can be quite dangerous. And it just got harder and harder to justify.
It just moved from something where it started to where it got to, and we just didn't feel comfortable with it anymore.
Yeah, and I will say this: we're certainly not martyrs for the faith. We have it pretty good, and we don't face a whole lot of opposition. But I think that's probably the most sacrificial thing we've done from a programming standpoint because it was extremely popular.
Yes,
I mean extremely popular, and I think that was that's what made it kind of tough because I think in that case we felt convicted to give up something that was actually quite successful, but it needed to go.
It's like as it translated and transferred into something we really didn't want it to be.
Yeah.
It was like the genie was out of the bottle,
Right,
so to speak.
right.
You couldn't get back to the other.
Right.
And so it
Pushing
was a
the
decision,
envelope,
and it wasn't an easy decision. It was an ongoing discussion, and we sought other people's guidance on it and wrestled with it and prayed about it, and that's kind of where we landed.
Yeah, and you're right because you just kept. It's like all of it. You kept pushing the envelope. Okay, if that now that's not enough, now let's go see if we can find this. And some of it just started getting kind of dark and twisted, and you certainly don't want to put people in danger who listen to the show, and you certainly don't want to put the team in danger.
Right.
All right, Bub, what do you got over there?
Rick, this one is from Jeffrey, and it's on disagreements.
Okay.
In 30 years you guys have been together, have there been any disagreements or any issues between the two of you or the staff that you work through that were tough to handle? If so, how did you get through them? Not looking for anything too personal or private, just curious to know how you two worked through any issues. Jeff in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Well, there's a couple of things that is noted on the show we disagree on a little bit. One is tomatoes, and Rick doesn't like them. I love them.
Right.
And he says they make funny noises on his teeth.
Yeah.
I've never really experienced that, but I just let it go.
You bite into a tomato sandwich, it squeaks.
Aliens is one that we've been discussing lately, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you have decided it's all demonic activity.
Absolutely.
I think that is a high probability, but I have not ruled out life on another planet yet. I don't see either one of those being a problem with our faith, because God would be in control of anything that's out there.
Right.
Jury's still out with me on that one, but that's it. I don't think we've ever had any that I can recall as big. I think if we ever have a disagreement on something, we will usually maybe fuss a little bit, pick at each other about it, and then we'll just sit down one morning and work it out.
Yeah,
I can't really remember any that I would say is notable.
There's never been a, hey, and you know what I think it is, and I think it's good. I mean, you may say, well, I don't think it's copping out because I think if you lose the harmony of the team, you're going to lose the show. And so I honestly, other than, and the good news is everybody here is on the same page spiritually, so that's not a problem. So if it's not spiritual, there's nothing I have to do or not do. I mean, and if I feel like that everybody's, or more importantly, if Bubba's not really wanting to do it, or the way he feels if I'm not really wanting to do it, that partnership is so important that we usually just say, if we can't agree on it, let's just not do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's worked because what good is it if somebody says, well, I'm going to get my way on this, and the other one's going, well, I really disagree with this. I mean, do we want that in the room?
I think the only time you got mad at me, and I think it was the first year of the show, is I forgot the checkbook on payday. And
that's probably been the only time I was mad. The entire time out of 30 years, you know what I mean?
So, how about this? It was my fault.
Well, right,
I should have brought it.
Well, look, the check can't bounce.
I had to drive back home and get the checkbook. Yeah. And so I, didn't forget it anymore after that.
And I want you to know this who was it, Jeff? His email is, Jeff. I want you to know, we get this question from time to time. We're not dodging that question. Honestly, we just don't really spend a lot of energy on anything that we don't agree on, and plus there's not that many things we don't agree on.
This kind of goes back to the longevity of what we've been doing.
Right.
I think, in our business, it is about ratings and revenue.
Yeah.
So we have to compete to have good numbers on everything. But you also battle longevity.
Right.
And I think that people forget that in bands,
yes,
other shows that work together.
Yep.
And like you were saying, there's many times you may have a point that you feel like you're right about.
Yeah.
But you don't go to the mat on it because you go, it's not a hill I want to die on, so to speak.
Yeah.
We've overused that term lately.
But true.
But you know what what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the fact that we know we spend a lot of time together, we don't want to get on each other's nerves. We had a question, I know the last time, about do we socialize a lot outside the show? Some, but not a ton.
Not a lot.
Because we're already spending a lot of time
We spend
together.
a lot of time together every day.
And because you can get out and do projects you want to do. I get out and do projects I want to do.
Which
These
is
other
healthy.
guys do, hams.
Which is healthy.
Yeah, it gives us breathing room so you don't feel, like you're suffocating doing the show.
So true.
So it helps with the longevity.
Yep.
And really, at this point, 30 years down the road, defeating longevity has been a bigger victory than just ratings from rating book to rating book.
And when you go back to shows and bands and things that don't make it, when you get to the heart of what finally broke them up, it's usually something quite petty.
And it was because they were on each other's nerves.
Right. Yeah.
But think about
yeah.
this. We've talked a lot about the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And they're all in their 80s. How long have they been together? They started touring in the 60s, right?
Yeah, it's forever.
Versus the Beatles.
Right.
Both of them very successful. One group could get along, the other one couldn't.
Right.
And so they both won on
Yep.
the record charts.
Yep.
But the Beatles lost in longevity.
They did. And
Because they couldn't get along.
And I think longevity is the hardest win to get.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll come back. We'll finish it up. Letters from the audience on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
All right, so we're back. Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. It is letters from you, the audience. Bubba, here's one. It says, will Fat Fest ever return, even for just 1 year? Well, I'm glad we didn't do it this year because where we live, it's 100 degrees. And this is the time of year that we did it. Some things are evergreens, and then some things, they have a start date and an end date. And this one, honestly, for me personally, was a battle against myself. I really enjoy music. I enjoy my time of being in bands. It was, like I say, my second favorite thing that I got to do, with radio being, of course, the first. And I really enjoyed my time working with bands, writing songs. But taking on that festival, it was a lot. Because as soon as it would end, you would have to start thinking, all right, what are we going to do next year? Now, I liked it because, and this is something that Bubba has been a proponent for on our show for a long time, and I think it served us well. So I give you kudos. Let's do things that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that nobody else could do, to put together a festival that really featured no big stars, and we would actually headline a festival with acts in front of us that were more successful than us.
Yes, it was a little different take
in music,
on it all.
but it was all tongue in cheek, and let's play rock star for a little while and have some fun. I'm not saying that we would never ever do it again. But I don't, boy. I know like we were talking about. We have to kind of put our energy and time into things, and then you go, well, okay, that account is empty. And it's almost like the things we need to devote ourselves to move the show forward, to interact with the audience, to do a great show Monday through Friday. It's like when we go over and say, is there any Fat Fest left in the account? We look over and it's just not there. Is that oversimplifying it? It's like I don't feel us having the energy for it.
Well,
it's like
like you said, they're evergreens, and
Yeah.
I probably was dragging my feet on that one. I think you probably drug your feet on Turkey Tops.
right. I did.
We all just said, well, let's just stay at the house,
Yeah.
and try to keep doing the shows. Probably
Right.
better.
Yeah. But I did, there was something special.
Oh, it was a lot of fun when we did it.
When that live crowd and the numbers of you that came to Fat Fest, it was really mind-boggling that many people would come, and it was a nice little, almost like a Rick and Bubba summit. You came from all the markets to our home market, and everybody would get in the hotels and go to the restaurants, and we'd have a great meet and greet after. I mean, it was a very, very cool thing. But it does require a lot of planning, and also I'm not trying to sidestep it, but dealing with these venues and stuff now is also a lot more difficult than it was. It used to be we'd just roll over and talk to the guys, and we'd plan it all out. Now you got a lot of and the thing that's frustrating, when we did the 20-year Rick and Bubba tour, which was a little bit different, I could not find two venues that did the same thing. Yeah. Every venue, they did the tickets different, they did the seats different, they did the what you got charged for different. So that
makes you appreciate Taylor Swift.
It really does. But thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that, and I'll never say never, but there are no plans to do it. I'll say that.
Email from Jason Garrett. Guys, love the show. Besides farms and lake houses,
okay,
what was your first big purchase you made when you thought, hey, we've made it? Keep up the good work.
Wow.
I will say for me, it wasn't a purchase. Betty and I built a house, our second house, worked very hard on that. I didn't have that thought then.
Right.
But the background was my first job was a weed removal technician at the local golf course.
Oh, I agree with you.
Running a weed eater all day. I had to cut grass growing up for me and some neighbors. It was a push mower. It wasn't a pleasant experience, but it was my job. I had allergies real bad. So every Saturday when I cut grass, my nose would run, my eyes would water till about Thursday of the next week, and it was time to cut it again.
Right.
So I told Betty, and we live paycheck to paycheck like most people do.
Yep.
And I said, the very first time we had a few dollars left over, I said, Betty, I want to have someone else cut my grass.
Amen.
And she agreed, and I got the local group called the Yard Dogs to come. And the first time they cut the grass and I got to stay inside, I thought, well,
we've arrived.
It doesn't get any better than this, my friends.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I went with the Lawn Rangers.
Right.
LAWN.
Love it.
Same thing. Bubba, I honestly, I'm not trying to copy. I think I agree with that in my same world. I thought if I could ever make enough money, because the thing I got into was Sherry loves all these bushes and plants and stuff, but I can't take care of them, so we're going to spend money on this landscaping that's just going to die. So it was also an investment that landscaping that we had invested in could be taken care of, and you could enjoy it without me messing it up and it all dying. And then probably for me, I didn't get one, but I got one for Sherry, which kind of became the family thing, is I had never had a nice vehicle ever, and we bought one of those Southern Comfort vans.
I remember. I love that van.
Yeah, and so I always wanted.
I hated when you got rid of it.
I always wanted my kids to be in one of those big time customized vans where they could watch movies in the back while we traveled, and we got one of those. And that's when I thought, that's something I thought I could never have. And so that. But can you believe that both of us are agreeing that hiring someone else to do your yard and landscaping?
It was so.
I didn't
important.
think I'd ever be able to do that.
Now, what is funny about that now is I love to go to the farm and bush hog.
Yeah.
And Betty says, now let me be sure I got this right.
I know.
You will go and bush hog a field at the farm on a tractor, but you don't want to cut your own grass. And I said, well,
I totally get that.
The tractor has a cab on it and air conditioning.
Right.
Okay, so it's really not that bad. It's kind of a great view of the field, and
it's
no
great.
Snakes can get me up there.
It's great thinking time. When you're pushing a push mower and it's 1,000 degrees, you might want to think, but all you can think about is how hot and tired you are.
Yeah, you usually leave your brain back on about round number 2.
Yeah. So. But no, that's two different things. I understand it. Of course, I'm a man, so I do understand it. But you're riding in a tractor. You mean business.
Just vibrating, it just feels good.
Yeah, you're knocking, and you can see the project behind you. You're like, I like the way that looks. I'm accomplished.
Immediate response to what you've done. You see how good it looks.
Yeah. So, well, I sure have enjoyed this. I really have.
Are we out?
Yeah,
we're not doing any more?
I think it's it. I see one here that I kind of wanted to answer, but I don't think that we legally can.
Right. Well, we'll save that. We'll save that pressing question for next time, Rick.
Yeah, because it's when other people get brought into our questions, I'm not sure we can.
I pulled that one out.
Did you?
Yes,
you?
I did.
I saw that one too, and I put it at the back of the stack, but I didn't. But hey, we're loving these questions you're sending.
They're really good,
and you can continue to do that. Speedy at rickandbubba.com. This will be a reoccurring series on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, because this is something based on looking at your response to this that you're enjoying. So that was good news too. So thanks to each and every one of you for taking time to be with us. And if you're not familiar with the Daily Show and you're hearing us talk about all this, you're like, what are y'all talking about?
Are these idiots
Yeah,
or what?
it's rickandbubba.com. You can go there and find out all the information you could ever want to know about the show. And we're on Monday through Friday in all these different ways. And you can find it either in a market near you, on a radio station, or on all our other streaming options, whether you want to do that live or archive. So thanks, Bubba, for another great podcast. Thank you. Thank you, our producer, Chris Adler. And thank all of you for being here for this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.